get ready to think a little differently today because we're going to try and imagine a world where things went just a little bit differently.
Oh, yeah. This should be interesting.
It really should. So imagine if the American Revolution never happened.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no fireworks on the 4th of July,
Hmm.
no Star-Spangled Banner, none of the iconic American symbols that we know today.
Okay.
What if America just stayed part of the British Empire?
So instead of the United States, we'd have this British North America, loyal to the crown even in the 21st century. That's a wild thought.
It is wild, isn't it? I mean, instead of picturing the stars and stripes, just try and picture the Union Jack flying over a continent that's shaped by both British tradition
Yeah.
and that American frontier spirit,
Right, right.
What would life be like today in that version of North America?
Yeah, this isn't just about switching out a flag.
Yeah.
We're going to dive deep into how this alternate timeline could have changed politics,
Right.
culture, economics, global conflicts. It's all connected.
It really is. It's kind of mind-blowing
Yeah.
to think about. So let's rewind all the way back to 1775,
Yeah.
a year of super high tension. But instead of those shots being fired at Lexington and Concord,
Right.
imagine if compromise won.
Hmm.
What if the British government made some serious concessions to appease those colonists?
So what? Parliament offers them representation, more local control, maybe even some tax breaks?
Exactly.
Huh. Instead of a revolution, you get intense political debate.
Yeah, and figures like Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington,
Yeah.
instead of leading armies, they become champions of this new system,
Oh, wow.
debating in Parliament in London,
Right.
shaping policy,
Yeah.
advocating for colonial rights,
Yep.
but within the British Empire.
So the founding fathers, as we know them, they're playing a different game.
Completely different.
Still fighting for their ideals, but on a different stage.
And think about this. No devastating war.
Yeah.
Thousands of lives are spared. The colonial economy thrives as part of that vast British trading network. Boston, New York, Charleston, all these major ports fueling a global economic engine.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah,
Imagine the Industrial Revolution happening in America, but with British backing, the money, the resources,
right.
the potential is enormous.
It's really hard to even fathom it all.
Yeah.
I mean, picture bustling cities with Victorian architecture mixed with early skyscrapers.
Mm.
Maybe American English keeps more British spellings and phrases.
Yeah, and maybe cricket's as popular as baseball.
Oh, wow.
We start to see a very different cultural landscape.
We really do. And that leads to the possibility of a totally different global superpower.
Exactly, a British Empire that includes all of North America.
Wow.
Think about the combined strength. It could have dominated the world stage well into the 20th century.
And that would have had profound consequences for history as we know it.
Absolutely world-changing consequences. A British Empire that strong, though, would definitely face some new challenges.
Oh, absolutely. Both internal and, I imagine, on the world stage as well.
Yeah. How would other global powers react to this Anglo-American giant? Would we see new alliances? Maybe even more intense rivalries?
Yeah, it's like a massive geopolitical puzzle.
Exactly.
Before we get too lost in global power dynamics, though,
Right.
let's zoom back in on British North America.
Okay.
We've talked about regional assemblies,
Right.
but how would they actually work within this larger empire?
So think of it like this. You might have a North American parliament,
Okay.
maybe based in Philadelphia, with representatives from each region handling things like taxes, infrastructure, local governance, that sort of thing.
Okay.
But foreign policy, defense, that would likely stay under London's control.
It's like a hybrid system then,
Yeah,
blending self-governance with the ultimate authority of the crown.
exactly.
But wouldn't that create tension? I mean, would those American representatives in Parliament actually have enough influence?
That's where the personalities of those founding fathers become really important.
Yeah.
Imagine Benjamin Franklin, with his wit and his diplomatic skills navigating Westminster.
Oh, for sure.
Or Thomas Jefferson passionately arguing for colonial rights.
Yeah.
Even within this different system, their intellect and drive would make a difference.
Right, but it wouldn't be all smooth sailing, though, would it?
Of course not.
There'd still be disagreements, debates, maybe even some rebellions.
Oh, absolutely. No political system is perfect. This one would have its own set of problems.
For sure, for sure.
You could have debates about taxes, about representation,
Right.
about the balance of power between London and the colonies. And as British North America grew, population, economic power,
Sure.
those tensions would only get worse.
Yeah. And what about westward expansion?
Oh, that's a good point.
I mean, In our timeline, it was driven by this idea of manifest destiny,
Right.
American exceptionalism, a right to expand across the continent.
Yeah.
How would that have worked in a British North America?
Well, the British had a very different approach to westward expansion.
Okay.
It was a lot more cautious,
Mm.
often focused on keeping treaties with Native American tribes.
So instead of this rapid and often violent westward push that we know,
Right.
it would have been more gradual,
Yeah.
more negotiated.
A slower process.
So no Wild West, huh?
Maybe not. You might see British forts and trading posts kind of dotting the landscape instead.
Hmm. And what about the Native American tribes themselves? Would they have been better off in this alternate timeline?
It's impossible to say for sure, but it's worth thinking about.
Yeah.
The British, with their emphasis on diplomacy and treaties,
Right.
they might have been able to prevent some of the worst atrocities that happened during westward expansion.
Okay, but even with a more peaceful approach, would there still be conflict? I mean, over land, over resources.
Well, of course, conflict is inevitable. There would still be challenges, injustices, struggles for power.
Right.
But the intensity, the scale of those conflicts, maybe they could have been lessened.
Okay, so we have this British North America,
Yeah.
this mix of British and American influences, a unique political system, a different approach to westward expansion. Now, how would a stronger British Empire have affected major world events, like the World Wars?
That's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so imagine World War I, but with a British Empire that includes all of North America.
Wow.
That changes everything.
Yeah.
The British would have access to massive resources, manpower, industrial capacity. It's almost impossible to imagine the impact.
So they could have defeated Germany a lot sooner, maybe even prevented Hitler in World War II.
It's possible.
But wouldn't such a powerful empire create a backlash from other countries?
Of course, a dominant global power always faces pushback.
Right.
It might be economic competition, political maneuvering, even military challenges. A stronger British Empire might have prevented some conflicts, but it also might have started new ones.
So even in alternate histories, there's no guarantee of peace.
Exactly. Every action has a reaction,
Right.
and the consequences are almost impossible to predict.
It really makes you think.
It does. These what-if scenarios are so compelling.
Yeah.
They make us think critically, analyze history, and realize that even familiar events could have turned out completely differently.
Okay, so we've looked at the politics,
Uh-huh.
the economics of this alternate North America.
Right.
But what about the culture?
Mm.
How would a British North America have shaped things like art, literature, even music?
It's interesting to think about
It really is.
how those creative expressions might have developed differently.
Would we even have American literature as we know it?
Right.
Would those uniquely American voices have even emerged, or would they have been totally different?
It's a fascinating thought.
It really is.
Would we have had, like, a British North American Charles Dickens
Oh, wow.
writing about life in those industrial cities?
Instead of Mark Twain and his Tales of the Mississippi.
Exactly. Or would our music be this blend of British folk traditions and African rhythms?
Creating something completely new.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing to think about.
So instead of American artists forging their own distinct paths,
Right.
they're more aligned with British movements.
It's possible.
Like, imagine American poets drawing inspiration from Wordsworth and Coleridge,
Yeah,
but with that North American twist.
exactly.
So instead of rugged individualists and stories of westward expansion,
Right.
we get something a little more, well, British.
Not necessarily British,
Okay.
but definitely influenced by those traditions.
Okay.
But remember, even within the British Empire, there was room for variation.
Sure.
Think about Australian literature.
Okay.
It's got its own unique voice, even though it's rooted in English tradition.
So maybe we get a whole new genre,
Yeah,
British North American literature.
exactly. Blending those British sensibilities with that American spirit.
I like that.
Yeah.
And what about music?
Mm-hmm.
Would we still have jazz, rock and roll, hip hop? I mean, those are like quintessentially American genres.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Those genres were so tied to the African American experience
Right.
and the social and political context of the United States as we know it.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine them emerging in the same way.
But maybe some different musical styles would have developed.
For sure.
I mean, maybe there's this fusion of British folk music
Right.
with those African rhythms brought over during the slave trade,
Yeah.
creating something totally new.
Absolutely.
And what about visual art?
Hmm.
American painters,
Hmm.
influenced by, like, the pre-Raphaelites, maybe,
Yeah.
depicting scenes from colonial life.
That would be interesting to see.
It would, or maybe a whole new school of landscape painting emerges.
Yeah, capturing the vastness of this alternate continent.
I mean, culturally, this British North America,
Yeah,
it becomes a melting pot, just like the United States in our timeline.
absolutely.
This blend of British, American, indigenous influences.
Creating something totally unique.
We might miss out on some iconic American creations,
Yeah,
but we gain something new, something different.
it's a trade-off.
It really is.
But it makes you wonder, was the American Revolution inevitable?
Hmm.
Would this British North America eventually have gone for independence anyway?
Maybe through peaceful means. Right, or would it have stayed part of the British Empire?
Maybe evolving into something like Canada or Australia today?
That's a big question.
It really is. Questions we can't definitively answer,
Nope.
but they show us just how complex history is
Right.
and all the different factors that shape nations.
Yeah, this deep dive has really shown us how one event, the American Revolution,
Right.
could have gone differently.
And created a world both familiar and strange.
Exactly. It shows the power of choices,
Yeah,
the unpredictable nature of events,
right.
and all the possibilities that exist in alternate history.
Well, as we wrap up our journey into this world where America stayed part of the British Empire,
Right.
I'm left with a sense of wonder
Yeah.
and a much deeper appreciation for just how complex history really is.
Me too.
It reminds us that the story of humanity is always evolving,
Yeah.
with so many paths and possibilities yet to be explored.
And that's the beauty of these what-if scenarios. They make us curious, challenge what we think we know, and help us imagine all the possibilities that are out there.
It's been a really fascinating deep dive.
It has. So